Live, and I'm all by myself. I could be Elaine Powell right now and start singing all by myself. Hello. If you guys missed the live last week, then you may be shocked at the absence of Dr. Erin. I'm always shocked by the absence of Dr. Erin. You know, she is on holiday with her dad and brother in Colorado Springs. I believe right now she is hiking around the Garden of the Gods and absolutely loving it, I'm sure. We are different people in a lot of ways, and one of those ways is that she likes to hike up mountains, and I like to sit and watch people hike up mountains. I am outdoorsy in that I drink on patios, but I have lots to cover today. So first of all, I'm going to go through the empathy exercises that we missed last week and a couple new ones for this week, including, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the women's gymnastics at the Olympics because we got to talk about Miss Simone Biles. And so if that is, if you're trying to do spoiler-free zone, then we will definitely, I will upset you, and I'm sorry, so I'll see you later. But also, after I cover that, we're going to do an AMA where, like, literally you can ask me anything and I'll hold the space and talk about it for as long as you want. Please comment and interact, and we'll kind of go from there. So first of all, before I forget, here we go on the empathy exercises. Away we go. So the first one is, I mean, none of these are happy, right? Like, that's the point of empathy exercises. But the first one's an update where we talked a little bit 2 weeks ago about the changing of, that it was going to be a delay in the football team from Washington choosing its name, and it was going to keep going. And then in the meantime, we got the incredible news that the baseball team from Cleveland has changed their names to the Guardians. There is an article in the Indian Country Today website, which we love to read a lot, that is a particular study and an explanation of the toll that mascots take on Indigenous athletes and Indigenous youth. So we'll be linking that in the show notes so you can read more specifically about that. On the national stage, you know, we're still very much hoping that the baseball team from Atlanta chooses to move in a different direction. And the football team from Kansas City chooses to move in a different direction. But on the national level here in the United States, I mean, there's a racist Indigenous mascot in the school district next to mine. So, like, it's a big deal in K through 12 schools. And there is going to be a lot of work to do there. So moving on to other things where we need to do quite a lot of work. In the last couple of weeks, it has come out that since the pandemic, the CDC is reporting essentially the highest number of drug overdose deaths that we've ever had in the United States. This is not necessarily a surprise when you think about the correlation of, isolation and addiction that often happens and what that looks like. Also, there's no way to know if these people struggled with addiction or if this was a one-time decision or anything else like that. But we also know that anytime the numbers are this high, there's so much unreported or unrelated pain. So as we consider the traumas in the after times, and as we move through and forward the pandemic, we need to keep in mind these tangential traumas as well. The next one is, I'm going to do two happy things, then we're going to move in all Olympics all the time. So, happy thing. We have, ladies and gentlemen and germs, we have our very first fully out National Hockey League player. I am so excited. I know this is not our first National Hockey League player who is a non-heterosexual, but I know it's the first one that we've talked about. So the new Nashville Predators welcome Luke Prokop to the team, and he was very casual in the same way that the kid who came out in the NFL was just like, hey, hi, got to be my best self here. Need you all to know I like dudes. And that's my paraphrase. I cheered so loud. I was so excited. We talk about visibility. This is really important. And additionally, I love when we get as many different kinds of humans showing as many kinds of sexualities as possible. So obviously the NHL is a very testosterone driven, traditional masculine conversation, just like American football is. And I'm really, really happy. I like hockey. As Dr. Erin's best friend, I am contractually obligated to be at least have an affinity for the Pittsburgh Penguins. As a Philadelphian, I'm supposed to hate them. So like we kind of come to a thing. I don't believe I have any emotional or contractual relationship with Nashville, but I like the city and I love a lot of people that are Preds fans. So now I am too. Very excited to watch the Nashville Predators this season. Definitely hope that Luke gets a lot of ice time. And I don't really know what that looks like in terms of like the process of Jay. At some point, maybe somebody can explain it to me. But like, if he's a prospect, does this mean that he kind of plays? I don't understand hockey. So the back politics of hockey. So in our second super happy thing that also has to do with sexuality and gender is that Argentina this week became the first country in Latin America to legally recognize non-binary as a gender. Yay for Argentina. So excited. People now can put X as their gender on all government documentation. We're thrilled for them. And we definitely hope that this is the first, a good step for the rest of Latin American countries and North American countries, that we can accept that gender is not a binary and there are people that would prefer to not identify as such. Now we're moving on to all Olympics all the time. Olympic thing. You may have heard that the sand handball team from Norway, not beach volleyball, so beach handball team was fined for not wearing bikini bottoms and instead wearing shorts. We here at Abbey Research stand with many other sports fans, specifically the podcast Burn It All Down and the sports outlet The Gist, in saying that people should be able to play in whatever they want to play in. Regulation uniforms need to have a lot more flexibility than they currently do. And the handball debacle is a good example. Local hero in my heart, she literally grew up like down the way from me, Pink, is going to be paying the fine for that team so that they don't have to be doing it, which I really, really love. NHL Luke Prokop update. We have here a note from resident hockey expert, at least today, since Dr. Erin wasn't here to tell me, is that adorable Luke Prokop is not on the team. He'll likely play on the junior team this season, but he could be called up to the Preds if there's injuries, but he's signed the team, so he could play. This is very, very exciting. So it is different than like being on the practice squad for the NFL, which I'm glad about. So he's like a full official part of the team. So we have a full official team member who is an out and proud non-heterosexual human. I'm very, very excited. Yay, again, for Luke Prokop. Also, in terms of clothing, we had the news this week that Germany, the female gymnastics team from Germany, performed. Guys, this is why I don't do these alone. The female gymnastics team from Germany did their routines in full body unitards. Normally, the Leos are, cut in a bikini line, and so there's long sleeves and a covered up, neck and chest area, but people's legs are free. And Germany said, you know what, we don't really want our legs free either or bare, and so we're going to be doing unitards. Very, very exciting in terms of, again, if it's not impeding anyone else's play, why do we care what people wear? This will also go into the swim caps that the IOC said were not appropriate for natural black hair. Why do we care? If it's not impeding anybody else, why do we care? So final thing in all Olympics all the time, and this is the one that I want to talk about for a little bit, just for a hot minute by myself, is that tonight in Japan, but today for the rest of us, Simone Biles pulled out of the U.S. Olympics, U.S. team final right after she completed her vault. She cited mental health concerns, was very open at the press conference, said the pressure to be this GOAT that you all talk about all the time, the weight of the world on my shoulders, all the expectations was just too much, and I had to protect myself. I would like to give 45,000 million, 100 gajillion rounds of applause to Miss Simone Biles. When we talk about what a champion really is, that's it. That's it. Like I said on LinkedIn in an article that I wrote, she may be the greatest athlete of all time, the most decorated. She has moves named after her. She's done all of this. She's like the absolute amazingest. But for me, what makes her the greatest of all time truly was her decision today to prioritize her health over a medal count. This is especially prescient in the sport of women's gymnastics, where for decades, the bodies of young women and girls have been sacrificed for the medal count and the pride of the United States. They were sacrificed in terms of injuries. They were sacrificed to Larry Nassar's abusive proclivities. They have been sacrificed for decades. And Simone stood up today and said, no, my body, my brain, my soul, myself is more important than your flag, your medal count, your organization. Revolutionary. I have personally, I just can't. She's talked a lot about coming back to the sport to be a voice, to remind the USAG that they have a responsibility to protect future athletes. There needs to be an independent organization about how long Larry Nassar was allowed to go, and Steve Penny and what he knew, and John, what's his face from Michigan, the guy who was, I'm drawing a blank, but another particular gentleman in this who was indicted was a coach, a very, very famous, brutal coach in Michigan, I believe it was, died by suicide when the same day that his charges were filed against him. There are also no charges against either Bella or Marta Karolyi, which lots of athletes tell us there needs to be in terms of what they knew and what they hid and what they were comfortable with. Again, these are all allegations against everybody but Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar is a convicted felon. And the USA Gymnastics organization, according to athletes from Rachel Denhollander to Simone Biles and everybody in between, have repeatedly said that the USA Gymnastics organization has not proven to them that they have done enough to protect future generations of gymnasts. And so Simone stepped into this breach and said, I'm going to keep competing so that I can do talking heads with Hoda Kotb on NBC and draw this attention. So there's the answer of like trying to do COVID gymnastics. She has been very, 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 very clear that her family is her entire support system. I can't imagine trying to perform at that level and you're talking to your boyfriend and your family on Zoom. Like, I had a hard time doing a TEDx with just my mother there in terms of the support network I normally have. And I wasn't her. Like, I can't imagine that. Additionally, we need to recognize always that Simone Biles is a survivor. This is her first Olympics since vocally claiming her status as a survivor, since coming out and telling us that she was also one of Larry's victims. We have no idea what triggered her. We have no idea and we don't need to know. But when we talk about empathy exercises, the important question to ask today is not, oh my gosh, isn't it a shame that Russia won a gold medal? Like, what are we ever going to do about getting US dominance back? The question is, oh my gosh, isn't it amazing that an athlete protected herself over the system? Love it so much. So those are your empathy exercises for today. We're at 13 minutes, so let me make a note for Eleanor. I should have done all the individual bookmarks, but I think we all knew I was going to be too much of a mess to do that. So we're going to go into the AMA pals. Hello, Roxanne. It's good to see you. Hello, Clayton. Hello, Jay. Anybody with us have any questions for the AMA portion of me? I can talk about our family business, why I got into this work, things like that. Let me take a sip. Unofficially sponsored here by Grapefruit sparkling water at all times. Okay. Well, while folks are typing, I see a couple people typing, and typing can sometimes take a minute. Let's see what fun story I could tell. Oh, Roxanne wants to know when my next TED Talk is. That's such a great question. It is October the 14th, which is a Thursday, which I find to be strange, but Chicago does Chicago. So it's October the 14th in Chicago. I do not know the time. I just know that it will be on the 14th. And for that talk, I will be discussing trauma and how to reframe it. Essentially, that what we do as human beings is take our trauma and the trauma of somebody else and compare it against each other. So it becomes this like suffering Olympics, right? Like, oh, well, you don't have it that bad. Like, oh, it's not that, like, whatever. But that's not what matters. What matters is that trauma interrupts our lives. Trauma is not comparable, but it's inevitable. And so how do we navigate that in a new way? So that will be TED Talk number 2. I'm still waiting to hear. Actually, I applied to a TEDx the week before Chicago in Farmingdale, Long Island. And if I get that one, then that will technically be my second. And then I'll do my third about 5 days later, which would be really insane and really fun. And I would be up to it. That one would also be about trauma, but about a different aspect of it, where I talk about Northern Ireland as a cautionary tale. And that if we don't deal with communal trauma, i.e. everything post, during the after times of COVID, we may have a situation in Northern Ireland, which is quite in the after times of the Troubles for them, where there's very, very high rates of mental health issues, very, very high rates of death by suicide, especially among young men. And a lot of it's because of a cultural kind of like ennui and a decision of who gets to be a victim and who doesn't, and some other a lot of big unresolved stuff. So I'll be talking about that at Farmingdale and how we, as the rest of the world, can use them as that essentially we do not want to be, we just don't want to. I love Northern Ireland, but we don't want to handle trauma like they do. Clayton has the question of, tell me about the evolution of this channel. What made you want to do YouTube? Such a great question, Clayton. And at the very beginning, it starts with Handmaid's Tale. So the Hulu show was entering its second season, and Dr. Erin and I were talking about how to do recaps. They had been popular. We liked doing them, all those kind of other things. And I was going to start traveling a lot more than I had been before. And we had done all of them written down and kind of gone back and forth in this chat fashion. But it was getting to the point where even sending emails back and forth was going to be too much. Like, I was on planes all the time, all this kind of other stuff. So why didn't we just film it? Why didn't we just decide? So that's where it started. And then ever since then, it's just continued to grow. Like, we'll be talking about something and be like, hey, we can make a YouTube series about that. Or, you know what? Like, YouTube's free and we have this channel. We may as well put it up. So that's like the Hottish Takes. That series started kind of that way. And that started with our feelings about the author Rachel Hollis. And it was like, oh, we have to say something. We have something to say. We have an idea that is worth spreading about Rachel Hollis and her empire. So let's create a series around that. And since then, Hottish Takes has covered, the Sarah Everard case in Great Britain. It has covered the Ulster rugby rape trial in Northern Ireland. It's covered the Britney Spears conservatorship, things like that. And then once we started covering Handmaid's Tale, it was like, what else can we cover? People started asking us to cover things. We had a friend that really wanted us to talk about the Netflix show Unbelievable, which is about what happens when a sexual assault survivor falsely recants out of pressure. And she wanted us to analyze that for her. And so we did that. We did The Crown because a lot of people asked, and it just kind of kept going from there, and what that means and how we can kind of keep serving. And then now a lot of you guys very, very wonderfully ask us a lot of questions. The lives started because we love talking to people in the comments. We love having those conversations. And so we were like, well, what if we started doing a live? Other people do lives. We could do lives. And then we could have live conversations with our absolutely incredible subscribers that have so many conversations. Nadine started showing up a lot in the comments. And then we got talking to her on Instagram about something else, realized the three of us have a lot of synergy. So now Nadine's an honorary doctor. She's a doctor in her own right as well. She has a doctorate in education, but she's an honorary good doctor. So it's kind of just evolved. From a business perspective, obviously, video is what algorithms really love. And once somebody told me that Google owned YouTube, and the more YouTube videos we put up, the more Google would prioritize kind of us in searches for things, the more I was like, well, I can talk to a poll. So like, let's just do that. Dr. Erin was a little bit more hesitant. I will admit she'll tell you she wasn't as comfortable in front of the camera at the beginning. I come from a theater background. She doesn't. But she's grown so much. And I love doing lives. I love being on camera with her all the time, but even more so now that we're all both comfortable and really happy with this arrangement. So from a business strategy perspective, now everyone's like, oh my God, you need to have, like we'll be in clubhouse rooms or I'll be in business strategy conversations. And people will be like, oh, well, speakers really need to have an online presence because everybody's moving away from the like in-person stuff, right? So because we're going to do hybrid, so people need to be able to prove that they can command a room virtually and command a room on stage. And Erin and I are sitting here being like, we have been doing this for 4 years. Where are the rest of you? Like, we were Zooming before it was cool. Where have the rest of you been? So been doing that here. Clayton, I think Clayton says that Unbelievable is a very important show. Saw our review for season 3 of The Crown and became a subscriber immediately. Oh, God bless. You suffered through The Crown and our incredible anger at that show. Guys, season 3 of The Crown was a lot of us just yelling about, well, this is where they should have talked about Northern Ireland. God love you. Season 4 was even worse. But thank you for joining us. We love seeing you and talking to you and hanging out. Thank you so much, Clayton. Roxanne, sorry, I missed your comment about the TED Talk. So the TED Talk will not be streamed live. Almost no TED is streamed live. That's part of their license that I will very, very honestly, I hope evolves soon. But they like the prioritizing the room first, and I respect that completely. So they want to prioritize the experience in the room to create that kind of very fun alchemy that happens, and then spread it further. So while Chicago will not be live streamed, the videos will be released. So I actually just saw the edit of my South Lake Tahoe talk. It's amazing. They made me look so professional, like an actual TEDx speaker. Oh my gosh, I had like the Britney Spears microphone and everything. So once I approve it, it will now go to TED Corporate. TED Corporate will approve it, and then it will go up on the TEDx YouTube channel. And then at that point, we will be telling you guys, we will talk about it so much. We have a whole plan. We're going to ask you to help us promote it on a very specific day using a very specific hashtag. We're going to try to really get it out there as much as possible. I'll ask you to share it with absolutely everybody you've met. Be the most obnoxious person ever. Because we really do believe strongly that my talk on eliminating tolerance from our vocabulary and instead interacting with other humans through inclusive, radical hospitality. We feel very strongly that this is an incredibly important message, and we want to get it out there as much as possible. We love TED Talks. We use TEDx and TED Talks in our teaching at Charleston Southern University, which we do every semester. We get to hang out with CSU students and talk to them about marketing and service and marketplace and business and everything else. And they always have to watch TED Talks. I will not be that professor that makes them watch mine, but we will definitely let them know it exists if they should choose to watch it. But my goal in life, just kind of like one of my silly goals, is to do 5 TED Talks. By the end of this year, I will definitely have 2, maybe 3, and then we'll keep going. And I'm going to figure out some way to do a TED Talk on fandom. Swear to God, I'm going to figure it out. I just have to figure out the idea that is worth spreading and why it matters to people beyond the fact that I just want to stand on a stage and talk about Discord and how much I love it. So I'm still working on that, but that's one of my goals. So, but yeah, really briefly back to some other stuff that we've covered if people aren't aware of it. So here on the YouTube channel, we've covered Unbelievable. We've covered a beautiful series called Unorthodox. We've covered a great series called Glow. We did cover a series called Dietland that we actually don't recommend, and I believe we ended up deleting those videos. Clayton asks if the TED Talk is available to view on YouTube. Not yet, but the minute it is, you all will know. The best way to know for sure that the best way to know for sure that it is out is to join our mailing list, which the links are always below. But here, I will, in the YouTube comments, guys, look, I'm so fancy. I'm going to put the link to join, to go ahead and sign up for our newsletter. And that way, you know, if you just like copy pasta that into a thingy, you know, a browser, then you'll know the minute it's going on, and we'll do a big thing. So I thought Glow was an incredible show, Clayton. I totally agree and would love to do that. Roxanne, why some fandoms can get so toxic, I can talk forever on, but I do think that there are quite a few talks on that in some other ways, and I'd love to talk about the positive aspects of fandom a little bit more than why they get so toxic, but we can definitely do a live on that sometime if you're interested. I have a lot of research, especially around the Twilight fandom, and the particular way that Twilight kind of was interesting, and why it got so toxic so quickly, to be completely honest, and why it's also, as we look at the history of fandoms, why it is an outlier in the particular ways it got toxic. So that can be maybe not a TED Talk, but I can definitely waffle about it forever. Roxanne says that there's a toxic culture with He-Man. I don't watch He-Man, so that's really interesting. I know I hear from people in Marvel that there's other toxic fandoms out there, and I don't interact with them. I think the oh my gosh, the Netflix movie, Old Guard. There's a big fan about that. And Clayton, people need to realize that our reviews aren't just recaps, they're more in depth. We agree. We've been trying to figure out for the algorithm if there's a better word to use than recap, but for the algorithm, it, like anything else we do, doesn't really seem to work. And so we call them recaps because like they are, but they're also discussions. And so we're stewing around with that. We do disclaimers because we do get comments of like, oh, everyone ignore this video because it's not a recap. So we've started doing disclaimers. But what we really love doing is the digging in, and we're wondering and kind of hoping now that a lot of those videos are also going to be on the podcast. So the whole coverage of Bridgerton, for instance, is on the podcast. We're gonna have like Falcon and Winter Soldier yet, and things like that. We're wondering if that will kind of shift what people are expecting, if that makes sense, because podcasts tend to be more discussion based, right? Like if you listen to a podcast about a show, it's a little bit more discussion based. But we have a friend that just tells everybody we're like an after show without the budget, which is totally true. But I would very, very gratefully talk to Jonathan Bailey about his feelings about being Anthony Bridgerton. And it is a life goal to be friends with Nicola Coughlan. So like, we're working on it, guys. We're working on it. When Dairy Girls comes back, we may end up doing an episode by episode recap of Dairy Girls so that we can unpack everything that's so beautifully Northern Irish in every single episode. Oh my God, that would be so much fun. And really, if I'm honest, as to like the drill down of why we do this YouTube channel is that it's fun. It's of service. We deeply believe in empathy education, obviously, but more than anything else, this is a blast. Even when we do the really hard work of the Colonizers World Tour and we sit with the weight, like for instance, of what's happening in Mozambique right now, which if you haven't gotten a chance to watch that video yet, there's been increasing incursions and insurgency violence in the northern parts of Mozambique. They're recruiting child soldiers. It's all they're having children behead other children. Like it's really terrible. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's just grievous. And sitting with that grief and also helping you guys sit with those international world realities of how the Portuguese left Mozambique, and how they were there. What does that gap leave? How do we need to pay attention to how colonizers left countries? They left, the British left India in a very specific way. They left Malawi completely differently. And so what does it, honestly, when they were done fighting India, the Brits were just like, screw it, like we're done, goodbye. And so how we love learning that. And so we can tell you guys and present it to you guys and help you be aware, not in a way to make you feel guilty for not knowing, but just like, hi, we have the bandwidth, we have the time, you're out doing your human lives. The way we human is to consume this information and give it to you. So we have a ton of fun doing this. Even when it's heavy, we feel that's a central part of our calling. So yeah, next up on Colonizers World Tour, this week we are in Portugal. And next week we're going to be in Haiti. And there's a lot to cover on Haiti. Then after Haiti, we're heading to French Guiana, which is not a country that anybody seems to know exists, including us. We kept mixing it up with Guyana. Two different countries, definitely didn't know that till we started this week. And then we're in Cameroon and Vietnam to kind of close out French colonies, and which is where we're spending the month of August. So we love doing that. We love talking pop culture. Obviously, it's our true joy. There's been things that we've watched that we're so glad the channel forced us to watch. We're going to do some coverage of some Olympics movies, in particular a video on the mental health of Olympic athletes, which is so prescient now with Simone's decision, called The Weight of Gold, that Michael Phelps produced. And like, I'd always wanted to see it, wanted to think about it, but bringing it to you guys, forced my hand. And I'm so, so glad that I saw it and that I experienced it. So that's kind of what we love to have fun conversations about why Wanda is a problematic hero, but we also want to talk about things of like, what's the average living wage in French Guiana? By the way, it's, $14,000. Like, what does that mean? What would that mean if somebody lived there, and how does that look like that? We like holding all of those things for everybody. So that's really our joy, and we have a ton of fun. So I just talked for 32 minutes straight. I have a lot of empathy right now for Emily Baker, who does live streams that are like, I think somewhere around 2 hours sometimes. Yikes on trikes, y'all. Yikes on trikes. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Talks about the company or about me personally? Anything else like that? So in terms of what's coming up next, let's have that conversation really, really briefly. So for the rest of the summer, we're going to be focusing on writing a lot of content for you guys. We're going to be coming out with 4 different workshops this fall that you can experience visually. 3 of them you are going to be able to consume for the incredibly high price of your email address. We're going to ask you for your email. You're going to get our workshop, and so you can spread it out to everybody that you know and ask them for their email. And we're just going to make it really, really widely available. We're going to be doing one around inclusive hospitality, one around reframing trauma, and one around unlearning exhaustion. Another one, which is going to be fairly inexpensive, to be honest, for the value that we're giving you, is going to be $47, and it's going to be a workshop of the live we did a couple weeks ago, Words We Don't Say Anymore. It's going to come with some patented Eleanor magic, so if you like the way that she throws in memes and things like that in our Colonizer World Tour videos and in some of our recap videos, you're definitely going to want to know, purchase that and follow that and deal with that. Jay asks, Jay, you are not, nothing is a bad question. Who is the first Funko doll on the bottom shelf? You know the top ones. Okay, let's do a tour of my Funko dolls. This, my dear friends, is Eliza Hamilton. She is a custom one. That's why her head keeps coming off. So I bought a custom one off of Etsy of Eliza Hamilton, because in my opinion, she is the true hero of Hamilton. The musical is really about Eliza. So that's why we do Eliza. Then next to her is MJ from Spider-Man. And then Carol Danvers. And then Wonder Woman. Then Minerva McGonagall. And then Shuri is in the corner. So yeah, and I'm looking, I really don't need any more Marvel dudes. I'm pretty good. I might get a T'Challa one. I can't decide, but so many more women need to happen. Erin has Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Megan Rapinoe, and Ava DuVernay behind her in her tall shelf when she's there. So then the other artifacts are that picture right next to Eliza is our favorite restaurant in Belfast called Molly's Yard. That is kind of like home and was the home of all of our celebrations when we lived in Belfast. Yeah, and then just some other fun stuff. And you may or may not see all the various penguins. I am such a massive fan of penguins. I love penguins. They're adorable. They mate for life. And the men have to incubate the eggs, and I find that delightful. Clayton asks me what kind of music I like. So I love everything but gangster rap, because it just isn't my vibe. On any given day, I think the things I listen to the most right now are Sarah Bareilles, Broadway original cast recordings, Casey Musgraves, a band called the High Women. I listen to a lot of ladies. And then Dolly Parton. Like, I always seem to have Dolly Parton in rotation. And really love Sarah Bareilles, really love Ingrid Michaelson. We'll always throw in some Little Mix, Blackpink, BTS. Just depends on my vibe. Taylor Swift is one of my true queens of my soul. I will listen to her all the time. But yeah, pretty much I'm fairly eclectic. And I love a good pop anthem you can scream on a dance floor. Love a good country song you can drive to, obviously Broadway. I love hip hop. I wasn't super into hip hop until Hamilton, because I felt really like I didn't know the way in. I didn't know the rules of it. I didn't know if I was allowed to like it. I didn't know any of that. And when Lynn in the annotated Hamiltome, he like talked about where things are from. And so, I grew up on this song. And so I would chase that song and then listen to that. Getting more into soul music, because we're also going to be covering Questlove Summer of Soul that he put up on Hulu, as he calls it, a Questlove John, because that is the word here in Philly that is like the ubiquitous word for everything. And so I'm getting more into soul music, learning more into that. My husband loves classic rock, so yeah, that is always on in the car when we are driving on road trips, because he is in charge of the driving. I do not care for driving. I do not care for being in the car. So he is in charge of driving. So that's kind of music I like. I'll speak for Dr. Erin as well. One of her favorite artists is a guy named Gregory Alan Isakov. She really, really loves him. She's also eclectic, although she is much more chill than I am. She listens to a lot less intense pop than I do. She's a little bit more on the like Lumineers, Mumford and Sons, Gregory Alan Isakov kind of side thing in that. So a little bit more chill, which shouldn't surprise any of you at all. Roxanne asks, have we thought about doing a video on the religion led to what happened with the Duggars and the children and sons and daughters? We have, for sure. And I believe I'll be doing it. We'll be doing a live about that right around his arraignment or trial date. We may screw up our schedule in that. Talking about the Quiverful movement, which I know the Duggars claim that they are not a part of, but they are the poster children of. So that's really hard for me to square that. But explaining the particular religious soup, the particular religious that they as a family exist in, that absolutely 0% explains Josh's behavior. It does explain why Josh was never held accountable for it until now. So yeah, if anybody besides Roxanne would like to know about that, please let me know and I'll prioritize it within our schedule. I've done some writing about it, but we haven't really talked about it. Reality TV stuff, you may have noticed, is stuff I always kind of have to drag Dr. Erin into covering. So I try to limit it. Like I forced her to quickly learn everything about James Charles, God love her. And she did a great job, but I try really hard not to ask her to consume a lot of drama at once, but I might spend some points for the Duggars because I think it would be a really fascinating conversation. And conversations around obviously lived religion are my jam and what I love to talk about, and reminding everybody that understanding is not condoning. I can never I will never personally agree with viewing people's bodies or God's call for parenthood that way, but I understand how they got there. And so we can talk about that. I am, as always, I'll say this since Roxanne just brought that up. If there's things happening in the ether, guys, and you're like, I really wonder what Dr. Kristen or Dr. Erin would say about that, we would love to tell you. We would love to serve exactly what you need. Most of the time, we're kind of shooting in the dark and saying, do you think they'd like this? Do you think they want to know this? What do we think our listeners would like to know? And we've seemed to land it pretty well. We must know you guys pretty well. And you're also delightfully vocal. And which is great, but please never hesitate. Comment on YouTube, send us a DM. I know Omar very, very thoroughly reacts with us on Twitter. Oh my gosh, Clayton, you just said the magic word. Have you guys ever covered the NXIVM cult? I'm watching The Vow on HBO. It's horrific, and I sympathize with the survivors. I did. So I've done a couple videos on NXIVM. One, we did, I wrote actually about them once in a blog post that we've since taken down. So I'm talking out loud. But I did a video book review on the book about NXIVM, which is called Don't Call It a Cult, on our sister channel, Abby Research Reads, and unpack it there. This is another thing where I'm super into it and Dr. Erin isn't, but I could always do a solo video and not bother her with NXIVM stuff. I can talk about NXIVM conservatively for 3 weeks. I have so many feelings on Keith Raniere. I have so many feelings on how it all worked. I've read all the books I can on it, including some of his original writings. I've listened to 4 podcasts on it now. I've watched both The Vow and the other one that was on Stars that was so good. For anybody who doesn't know, NXIVM it still is technically around, even though Keith Raniere's been sentenced to prison for a long ass time, was a cult, is a cult masquerading as a leadership development that's also a multi-level marketing scheme that uses neurolinguistic processing and neuroelasticity to manipulate people into doing lots of things, including allowing people to brand your skin literally brand your skin with a soldering iron as a mark of loyalty. So it is massive. There's lots of gender stuff. There's lots of body stuff. Keith controlled the eating of the women that were the closest to him. There's been a couple times where there was, as my husband and I were watching it, I just would look at John and be like, well, it's good to know I'm too fat for Keith. Like, saving grace. Because there was definitely times in my life where if somebody paid me as much complimentary attention as he paid these women, I can understand why you get swept up in it a little bit. There's a lot of us who are really lonely for a really long time, and it's hard to know that. Additionally, as a reminder to everybody who's never studied cults, the most powerful and ugliest and most insidious cults never go after the loners the way that we think they do. They always go after the powerful, connected people. They always go after the high performers. They always go after that, which is also what the most successful network marketing and multi-level marketing companies do as well. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of psychology, I should say, that goes into being a high achiever in the way that people with high anxiety and high dependency on the opinions of others often are. So yeah, if you guys want a solo video on NXIVM, I can throw it out there. We could even do a live at some point with it. And maybe around the time that season 2 of The Vow comes out on HBO, which they're telling us is next year sometime, Clayton. For sure. If you haven't listened to the CBC's Undercover podcast, I think it's that one. They were the ones that broke the story, and it's Sarah Edmondson's. It's somebody that Sarah Edmondson went to high school with, I think. That podcast was like, and then sign up for the free trial for Stars, and do that. Clayton says that as a child, named one of the dogs Chloe after Allison Mack's character on Smallville. Never would have guessed she'd be involved in something so bad. You and me both. I didn't name a dog after Chloe, but I remember I loved Chloe. I liked Smallville a lot. I remember when it came out that Allison Mack was arrested for leading a sex cult. Like, my brain blew up. Like, how is that possible? And I thought for sure that it was sensationalized and like, oh, come on, we don't really have sex cults these days. And then I started digging. I was like, oh, we do have sex cults these days. And oh, yeah, she was leading a sex cult. And oh my gosh. Yeah. I also know some friends who live in the area of New York where their head office still is, and talk about like driving around the neighborhood that all their houses were is like still really, really freaky. So again, Keith Raniere is a convicted felon. He is convicted on racketeering. He is convicted on sex offenses. He is a convicted felon. There's no more allegations with him. But some of the kind of stuff that they did to each other and the things like that, we need to remember, can get really, really messy for a lot of people. But he's a potential sociopath, and I'm not sad he's behind bars. I can't lie. So that's that. Okay, pals, it's 3:45 and I have got to scamper a little bit here, but oh my gosh, thank you to everybody who joined me, our first successful solo live. And thanks for asking these great questions. I love talking about everything we talked about today. I love it when you guys show up and we can create this little family and community truly from the bottom of our hearts. Dr. Erin and I you have no idea how much you mean to us. We talk about you guys when we're together. We check the comments. We screenshot the comments to each other all the time. And we are it's lots and lots of heart emojis. We are so blessed that that in serving you guys and helping you see the world differently, that you are so generous and back to us and letting us know that you're grateful to us. We are so, so grateful to you. Replay crew, if you made it all the way through this, which God love you, thank you so much for joining us as well. Love our replay crew. Never hesitate to comment and tell us where you're watching it from, when you're watching it. We love to know those kind of things. Couple quick announcements. Remember, the Culture Cast is live. Head to abby-research.com/podcast and find everything you need there about the Culture Cast. Head to the link that I dropped in the chat to sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss a single thing that is coming out, because there is so much. I'll be talking more about my TEDx journey as I prepare for Chicago, because we didn't talk a lot about it while I was preparing for South Lake Tahoe, but we'll talk a lot more about Chicago. Dr. Erin and I will also be in Chicago. So if you are in the Chicagoland area and you would like to be part of the Good Doctors International Tour of Hugs, as we are calling it, because we want to meet as many of you as possible, keep your eyes peeled, because on Friday, the 15th at happy hour, we have Chicago spies out there right now organizing for us. We will be meeting up in Chicago, and we can't wait to meet all of you if possible. Okay, guys, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Take care. Mwah. Bye.